Hey there everybody, how are you doing? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel. Today seems like it's going to be our first opportunity to maybe start some fairly significant conversations about E3 for 2022. Now, of course, there's a huge caveat when we talk about conversations revolving around E3 this year because, as many of us know, there is no E3 this year. They officially confirmed that E3 for 2022 is canceled. It's not happening. Not only is there no in-person event, there's not even going to be a digital event put on by the ESA. Now, of course, for most of us, that is very sad news because E3 is an exciting time, and for the last, 15, 20 years, even dating back before the internet was penetrating all of our lives, we all looked forward to E3 and the news and information and surprises and reveals and trailers and conferences that came out of it. And in fact, I myself had an opportunity to attend back in 2004, which was a golden age for attending E3. This was before they were selling tickets to people, just random people to be able to show up. It was very much an insider kind of thing to do. This was before the internet and everyone tuning in on their phones and online and on YouTube. It was even before YouTube, to actually watch things happen as they occurred, to see the press conferences at any way. At that time, it was really just everyone waited until the following month to read about what happened at E3 in physical magazines we held with our hands. As crazy as that may be to all of you young kids out there who can't imagine that, back in 2004, that's what E3 was like, and through crazy circumstances, I was fortunate enough to go, and it was heaven on earth, like my favorite week of all time in my life, 41 years on this planet. And so it is sad to think about E3 slowly going away more and more. However, the reason I'm having this conversation today is that we did get the confirmation this week that Microsoft and Bethesda are officially the first companies stepping up and confirming that they are doing some sort of presentation in place of the E3 week. They put out this tweet that said, "Save the date, catch the Xbox and Bethesda Game Showcase on June 12th. And then if we dive a little bit further, they say, "Today we are excited to announce that the Xbox and Bethesda Game Showcase will stream on Sunday, June 12th at 10 a.m. Pacific Time. This show will feature amazing titles coming from Xbox Game Studios, Bethesda, and our partners around the world." They go on to say the Xbox and Bethesda Game Showcase will include everything you need to know about the diverse lineup of games coming soon to the Xbox ecosystem, including upcoming releases to Game Pass on Xbox and PC. So this is great news across the board, and I think it makes most of us excited because one of the main console manufacturers and developers out there is now officially holding some kind of a show. And it's worth noting the timing of it, okay? This is what most of us hoped to see happen once we learned that E3 wasn't happening this year. And it's happening on June 12th. And that is usually the time, that week, like the second week of June or so, going back many years at this point. It used to happen in May, I want to say, E3. But over the past few years, it kind of moved itself into June. And so that first and second week of June is typically when we would see E3 happen. And so in lieu of E3 being canceled this year, Xbox is stepping up in that exact same week's window to have their show on Sunday, June 12th. Now, beyond that, the other exciting piece of news here is that this will be their first time to address the world in the week of E3, regardless of it being titled E3 or not, but it's their first time to do it since purchasing Bethesda. So it's very interesting and, in my opinion, cool and exciting to see them sort of labeling this and marketing this as a combined joint effort and presentation from both Xbox and Bethesda together. It's called, what is it here? The Xbox, let me move back to Twitter. Xbox and Bethesda Game Showcase. So straightforward, nothing fancy, but they're both listed in the title of the presentation. So they're really doubling down, and this is what I personally expected when this deal happened. They're doubling down on Bethesda being just a unique Xbox-owned entity, and I think that this further confirms that most of their highest profile titles that aren't under contract for other platforms, most of them going forward are going to probably be exclusive to Xbox platforms and Game Pass and that ecosystem, at least initially, right? Maybe there's going to be some exclusivity for the first year or two for some of these titles. Or maybe they're just forever going to be exclusive, but that's what I take away from this when I see them label it this way, that they're reminding everyone, hey, we bought and own Bethesda, so their games come part and parcel with everything Xbox. And so here's the thing, you guys know me as a Nintendo fan, and you know my channel is a mostly Nintendo channel, because they are my favorite of the companies and favorite of the consoles. But make no mistake, I love them all, I own them all, and I play on them all. Well, I actually haven't been playing on my Xbox Series X because there hasn't been anything to play since Halo came out, and the multiplayer for Halo is unfortunately really bad. So once I finished the campaign and spent maybe a week messing around in the multiplayer, I realized I didn't care anymore, and I've moved on, and I haven't had really almost any reason to turn my Xbox on since. And so what I'm trying to say is, I love Microsoft, and I love the Xbox brand, you know, and I enjoy having a Series X. I'm glad that I have one, but I'm waiting for reasons to turn it on and to play it more often. And so now that, in lieu of E3 canceling, Microsoft is coming to say, hey, us and Bethesda are going to show up during the E3 week and give you a presentation, I'm hoping they show us the goods. I want to see new titles announced we don't know about. I want to see updates about Gears of War, Halo. I'd like to see gameplay for a game like Redfall. Anything else coming from Bethesda, show me some Fallout, show me some Elder Scrolls stuff, just anything from Xbox Studios. Just anything. I mean, I don't even know. The list could go on and on. Obviously, Starfield is probably going to have a huge presence, and I'm very excited for that game. And there's probably others I'm blanking on here. And so, this is great news. But it also takes me to the next kind of part of this conversation is, if Microsoft stepping up to do this during the E3 week, if this is opening the door for other companies to maybe do the same thing. Of course, the main thing we think about is Nintendo, partly because we know Sony has been skipping E3 in general the past few years, and so I wouldn't expect them to do anything, especially with E3 being canceled, but also because Nintendo's my favorite company, and it's mostly what I cover here. So, of course, I get excited to transition from my excitement about Xbox's presentation to the possibility of Nintendo doing the same thing. And it's worth noting that even before Microsoft confirmed that this was going to happen, many people, myself included, still expected Nintendo to drop some kind of big summer kind of overall Nintendo Direct presentation. With or without E3, we kind of thought they're still going to have a Direct in the summer months, May, June, or July, because why wouldn't they? They already do Nintendo Directs every handful of months anyway. We just had one in February. E3 is canceled, but summer's coming up. Why wouldn't they still choose to just have a Nintendo Direct, even if it's not called an E3 Direct, and still make it feature some of their biggest and most exciting announcements, because they would know it's filling in the gap of E3. And with Microsoft, of all companies, being the first ones to come out and fill in this spot, I just don't see a world where Nintendo doesn't follow suit and announce the same thing sometime in the next month. And so this is all a long way for me to tell you guys that I absolutely think we're going to get that Summer Direct from Nintendo. I don't know if I'm going to spend really much more time in this video trying to go down the predictions route. I think that's best saved for a separate video, where I can maybe really dive in on what I might expect from an E3 or Summer Nintendo Direct. More just talking about it from the scheduling and the timing and the business sense, I don't see a world where Nintendo ignores the E3 week or the summertime window to give their biggest and most exciting presentation of the year, In general, I think what we've seen, the scheduling trend for Nintendo Directs over the past few years, is there's usually one in the first quarter, January, February, or March. We get the occasional one that's tuned specifically to a game, like Animal Crossing or Splatoon or what have you, and I think we'll get some of those this year as well. And then we do see the E3 Direct. We always get that. And then there's usually one around September or so, right? I mean, tell me if you guys agree with that. I'm not going to pull up the Wikipedia page and just find the listing of every date in the past. I want to keep this more organic. And just going from memory and my experience as a fan watching Nintendo Directs ever since they started, that's what I feel the trend has been going back, 4 or 5-ish years. Maybe we would say in the Switch era. That's what their overall trend has been. They've deviated here and there, of course. But I would think that we might get a Mario Strikers Direct. We might get a Splatoon Direct at the end of the year. Maybe we get something awesome like a Xenoblade Direct. Who knows? But I do think that outside of some of those game-specific ones we might see, I think we are going to see one come in for summer in June, maybe the same week as Microsoft's here, and we're going to get their biggest direct, and we're hopefully going to get more info on Zelda. We might get something concrete about Bayonetta 3, some updates about games like Splatoon 3 or Xenoblade, you know, small updates, small trailers. Maybe they talk about Metroid, right? We definitely want to see that. Obviously, we'd like to see confirmation of a game we don't know about. Is Pikmin 4 coming? Is a new Mario Kart coming? You know, I mean, the list could go on and on. And so it's just a very exciting thing to think about. Not only did Xbox's announcement make me excited for their show, and I am excited for their show, but it also made me realize this has to be the first step to seeing if Nintendo, or if we're lucky, Sony, maybe Sony does surprise the world and decide to do something similar. I mean, they still do their own state of plays and their own presentations. So maybe without the trapping of E3, maybe it further convinces Sony to do it because they don't have to worry about it being tied to E3, but they still want to have competitive messaging out there along with Microsoft and Nintendo. And so I just think, you know, to wrap this up, I know I'm kind of beating a dead horse here. To wrap this up, I think that Xbox's show is exciting, and I think it's really paving the way for Nintendo and hopefully Sony to maybe decide to do the same thing. I absolutely expect, hopefully in the month of May, Nintendo confirms that in June, they're going to be giving us a big summer E3 Nintendo Direct show. And so those are my thoughts and my kind of prediction and guess. Stoked about Microsoft, hoping to see something from Nintendo as well announced very soon. Do you guys agree? Do you think that this shows Nintendo will probably do the same thing? Do you expect a big summer or E3 show from them, even without E3 actually happening this year? Or do you think it's just too early to tell and it's impossible to predict? Whatever you think, talk about it below. And with that, this video is a wrap. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and I will catch you next time on another video. Bye-bye.